We live in an era of fascinating contradictions. We are the most technologically advanced civilization ever to walk the earth. We can accelerate particles to simulate the Big Bang. We can calculate the exact distance between two distant galaxies. We're brilliant at manipulating matter. But curiously, we're illiterate at constructing human symbols. Think about this for a moment. When we want to represent justice, still today, in the 21st century, we resort to Themis, a blindfolded Greek goddess holding scales. When we want to talk about love, we either use the Greek Aphrodite or resort to that simplistic symbol of a red heart, which represents fleeting passion that rises and falls more than true, sustainable love. Why? With all our genius, haven't we been able to create modern symbols for these values? The answer is harsh but necessary. Because growing as a human being is not our society's priority. For us, it's more important to calculate the speed of a spaceship than to understand inner justice. We know everything about the chemical composition of a book's ink, but we've unlearned how to read the content of the soul. But from time to time, individuals emerge who break through this barrier. Men and women who, through their own effort and suffering, rediscover ancient wisdom. One such man is Stephen Pressfield. He's not an academic philosopher. He's a survivor, a screenwriter, former Marine, a man who lived on the road and knew failure. Up close, and through his pain, he reached the same conclusions that Plato, the Bhagavad Gita, and humanity's great sages reached millennia ago. Today, we're diving into his masterpiece, The War of Art. Don't be fooled by the title. This isn't a book just for artists or writers. It's a combat manual for anyone who feels they have an unlived life within them. We're going to study the enemy that prevents you from being who you were born to be. There's an ancient Indian epic called the Bhagavad Gita in it. We see the warrior Arjuna paralyzed in the middle of a battlefield, between two armies ready to kill each other. But the sages explain, this war isn't external. It's not about territory or politics. It's an internal war. It's the human being fighting against his own inertia, his fears, and his cowardice to conquer himself. Stephen Pressfield gave a modern name to this ancient enemy that Arjuna faced. He called it resistance. Resistance is the most toxic force in the universe. It's the invisible enemy that stands between the life you live and the life you could live. We all have two lives. The life we're living now, with our routines, our jobs, our bills, and the unlived life that exists within us. You know that book you never wrote? That business you never started? That diet you always postpone until Monday? That apology you never asked for? That's your unlived life. And it doesn't die. It stays there inside, throbbing, creating anguish, neurosis, and unhappiness. Resistance is the bodyguard of this mediocrity. Its goal is simple: to prevent, at any cost, you from moving forward. To win a war, you need to know the enemy. You need to know how it thinks, how it moves, and where it hides. Pressfield dissected resistance like a general dissects the opposing army. Let's analyze its characteristics. First, resistance is invisible. You can't see it, but you can feel it. It's a repelling energy field. You know when you decide to sit down to work on your important project and suddenly feel a physical force pushing you away from the desk. You suddenly need to wash the dishes, need to check email, need to do anything except that. This repelling force is resistance. Second, resistance is internal. This is crucial. The enemy isn't your boss, isn't your family, isn't the economy, and isn't lack of time. Resistance lives inside you. It's generated by your own fear. We project resistance onto others, saying the husband doesn't support us or the wife demands too much. But in reality, if we removed all external obstacles, internal resistance would immediately create new obstacles. We are the saboteurs. Third, resistance is insidious and dishonest. Resistance has no honor. It will lie, falsify, seduce, and intimidate to prevent you from doing your work. It assumes whatever form is necessary to deceive you. If you're a rational person, resistance will give you logical arguments not to act, saying it's not the right economic moment. If you're a mystical or intuitive person, resistance will use that language, saying the day isn't favorable or the horoscope advised caution. Be careful. Resistance can dress itself as prudence, common sense, and even spirituality. I've seen people use Plato to justify laziness. Resistance will use anything to keep you paralyzed. Fourth, resistance is relentless. It's like the force of gravity or rain. You can't negotiate with gravity. Resistance doesn't tire, doesn't sleep. Many think that conquering laziness today guarantees freedom tomorrow. No, tomorrow morning. Resistance will be there, awake before you, ready to fight again. The battle is daily. It plays for keeps. Its goal isn't just to hinder you. It's to destroy your genius, destroy your soul. How do you know if what you're feeling is resistance or just common sense? There's a golden rule Pressfield teaches us. Resistance only appears when you want to go up. Think about this. If you want to leave work today, go to the bar, get drunk, spend all your money, and abandon your family, will you feel any internal resistance? Non-resistance will open the door for you. It'll pay your transportation. The path to self-destruction is friction-free. Going down. Every sane helps, or rather, every demon helps. But try starting a project that will help people. Try starting a meditation practice. Try writing a work of art. Try being generous. Immediately, you'll feel the pressure. Heavy artillery will start firing. Therefore, resistance is an infallible compass. What you feel most afraid to do, what you feel most resistance to starting, is exactly, mathematically, what you need to do. Fear is the indicator. The more important an activity is for your soul's evolution, the more resistance you'll feel toward it. If you feel no fear or resistance, that thing is probably not that important. How does resistance operate day to day? It rarely says, "Don't do it." That would be too obvious. Its favorite weapon is procrastination. Resistance doesn't say, "You'll never write that book." It says, "You'll write it, for sure." It's a brilliant idea, but not today. Start Monday. Today you worked hard. You deserve rest. Next week you'll start full force. Procrastination is the most effective mask because it doesn't seem like refusal. It seems like a sensible administrative decision. But tomorrow never comes. And so dreams die not with a bang but with a whisper of "I'll do it later." Everything that offers quick, cheap satisfaction is a tool of resistance. Sex, food, alcohol, shopping, social media. Resistance loves these things, not because they're inherently bad, but because they function as a bribe. Resistance comes to you and says, "Look, facing that blank screen is very painful. Confronting that problem in your marriage is very difficult. Here, have this piece of cake. Here, have this funny video on your phone. Here, have this online purchase. Isn't that better?" It offers us immediate relief so we don't seek deep healing. It addicts us to cheap pleasure so we forget the real satisfaction of fulfilling a mission. We become addicted to distractions because silence would force us to hear the scream of our unlived life. Have you noticed that when you finally decide to change your life, the world seems to conspire against you? The car breaks down, you get the flu. The neighbor decides to renovate their apartment. Your family starts creating unnecessary dramas. This isn't bad luck. This is resistance operating through the field. And often, we ourselves create the problem. Unconsciously, we act in ways that generate a crisis to have an excuse. We say we were going to start the project, but due to family confusion, we don't have the headspace for it now. The serious artist, the professional, doesn't tolerate drama. He knows drama as a form of addiction. Tolstoy had many children, a chaotic life, and wrote War and Peace. If you wait for life to calm down to fulfill your mission, you'll die waiting. This is the war scenario. The enemy is defined. It's invisible, internal, and relentless. But it can be defeated. In the next part, we'll discover how to stop being an amateur and become professionals in this battle now that we've defined the enemy. We need to understand how it recruits allies. Resistance doesn't work alone. It uses the people around you. There's a curious phenomenon. When you finally decide to overcome your inertia and start realizing your dream, the people close to you start acting strangely. Your parents criticize, your spouse makes faces, the dog bites, the neighbor buys a drum set. It seems the world's short-circuited. Why does this happen? There's a tacit silent agreement among people to remain in the same swamp of mediocrity. When you decide to climb out of the hole, you break that pact. Your success becomes a mirror reflecting the failure of those left behind. Seeing you fight your demons and win, they feel exposed. Unconsciously they think, "If you could do it, I could have done it too, but I didn't have the courage." This generates anguish. To them, you're a traitor. The crab's greatest sin is trying to escape the bucket. If it stays there quietly, fine. But if it tries to climb up, the others pull it back down. Don't expect people to applaud when you change. They'll try to sabotage you so they can feel comfortable again with their own inertia. The best you can do for them isn't to stop, but to continue. Be the example. Show that it's possible to escape. The bucket resistance also uses sophisticated emotional masks. One of the most dangerous is victimization. Pressfield worked in various places before being a writer, including a hospital. He tells how the director, an experienced cardiologist, said that of 30 patients she saw per day, only one was actually sick. The other 29 were creating drama. There were people starving for attention who used illness as a shield. Victimization is a brilliant strategy of resistance. If I'm sick, if I'm a victim of the system, my family, or my past, then I don't need to do anything. I have a perfect alibi. Victimization is a form of passive aggression. The person immobilized by resistance hijacks others' attention, blackmailing them with their problems. Be careful. If you're playing victim, stop now. This is the surest way to never accomplish anything in life. This brings us to the turning point. Pressfield says his life divides into two eras, before and after becoming a professional. There's the amateur and there's the professional. The word amateur comes from love, but here we use it to mean someone who practices an activity as a pastime, without real commitment. The amateur plays for fun. The professional plays for real. The amateur is one who has a dream but treats it Like a side gig, he writes when there's spare time. He paints when he's inspired. He exercises when it's not raining. The amateur identifies too much with the result. If he receives criticism, he crumbles. If he fails, he thinks the world ended. He lives in a fantasy world where risk isn't real. The professional is different. He has the lunchbox mentality. Think of a factory worker or a bricklayer. He doesn't wake up in the morning and ask, "Do I feel inspired today to lay bricks?" No, he gets up, grabs his lunchbox, goes to the site, and works. Whether happy or sad, rain or shine, he clocks in. The professional treats his art, his business, and his vocation with this same coldness and seriousness. The writer Somerset Maugham was asked if he only wrote when inspiration came. He replied, "Yes, I only write when inspiration comes. Fortunately, it comes every morning, punctually at 9 o'clock. The professional doesn't wait for the muse. He creates the schedule for her to appear. He prepares the environment. Physical order generates mental order." Pressfield tells how before writing, he tidies the house, cleans the desk, and even sweeps the doormat, so the muse won't dirty her garments when entering. It's a ritual of respect. The professional learned to separate ego from work. He creates a mental corporate entity, you incorporated. There's youth boss and youth employee. The boss is demanding, enforces schedules, enforces goals, and doesn't accept flimsy excuses. The employee just sits down and executes. This creates a healthy detachment. When you fail, it's not that you're garbage. It was just a bad day at the company. When you succeed, you're not a god. You just did your job. To endure this journey, one must cultivate a certain pride in being a poor wretch. Pressfield was a Marine and learned that Marines take pride in being the most miserable. They eat the worst food, sleep in mud, face the cold, and take pride in it. They look at other armed forces as weaklings. Whoever decides to pursue a great dream is volunteering for hell. You'll go through isolation, doubt, criticism, and failure if you don't have this thick-skinned pride, this ability to endure adversity without taking it personally. You'll quit at the first turn. The professional prefers to fail in the real world than to win in the fantasy world. Pressfield tells the story of his first sold screenplay, King Kong 2. The film was a disaster. It was massacred by critics. One critic even wrote, "I hope the name Stephen Pressfield is a pseudonym so as not to embarrass his parents." He invited friends to the premiere and nobody showed up out of shame. It was humiliating. But a friend told him, "Now you're in the real world. Before you were in the stands. Now you're in the arena taking hits and bleeding. Congratulations. Your life has begun." The amateur is terrified of judgment. The professional knows that humiliation is part of the price of admission. Does he look at the donut hole, or does he look at the cookie? The professional looks at the cookie. He focuses on the work, not on public opinion. He knows resistance will use failure to try to send him back home. But the professional adjusts. His posture wipes the blood and returns to work the next day. As certain as the Earth's rotation, in the next part, we'll explore how the professional accesses the higher realm and invokes inspiration. A professional validates himself. He doesn't need the world to tell him he's good to know he did good work. He faces criticism only to learn, not to define himself. He knows external validation is a trap. A supreme example of professionalism is golfer Tiger Woods. In a championship final, at a crucial moment of absolute concentration, a spectator fired a camera flash right in his face. Most people would have had a rage attack. The amateur would have screamed, blame the photographer, and lose the game right there, victimized by circumstance. Not Tiger Woods. He looked at the man with a withering glare, paused for a second, closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and returned to center. Then he made the perfect shot. The professional knows the real world is imperfect. There will always be wind. There will always be noise. There will always be unforeseen events. If you wait for perfect conditions to perform, you'll never do anything. Professional also knows how to reinvent himself. Actress Goldie Hawn once said there are only 3 ages for an actress in Hollywood: the babe, the diva, and driving Miss Daisy. It's a bitter critique of the system, but the professional understands the truth behind it. Roles change. A top athlete can become a great coach. A warrior can become a sage. The amateur clings to his old identity and falls into depression when time passes. The professional sheds his skin and continues serving his mission, adapting to what life demands of him at that moment. To maintain this sanity, Pressfield suggests a powerful psychological technique, creating you incorporated. When he needed to sell his scripts, he felt humiliated, like a beggar. But when he started seeing himself as the CEO of Pressfield, Inc., everything changed. It was no longer him, Stephen, asking for a favor. It was an executive negotiating a product. This separation is vital. You have to be able to fire your laziness and promote your discipline. Have meetings with yourself. Ask, how was our company's performance this week? This removes the emotional drama. If you fail, it's not because you're a bad person. It's just an operational adjustment that needs to be made. The professional recognizes another professional from afar. It's like in westerns. Gunslingers know who's good with a gun just by the way they walk. Seriousness and commitment emanate an aura of respect. John Wayne, the Western icon, had a phrase Pressfield loves. In a film, the villain flees repeatedly, and they ask Wayne if he'll give up. He responds, "I'm gonna get him. As sure as the turning of the earth." That's the professional's determination. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. He's inexorable. He'll sit down and do the work, as sure as the turning of the earth. But how do you make this leap? How do you stop being an insecure amateur and become this unshakable professional? There's a legend about Bodhidharma, an Indian master who lived in China. One day a tormented disciple sought him out. The disciple was a former general, trapped in samsara, the vicious cycle of meaningless routines and suffering. He begged, "Master, please take me out of samsara." Bodhidharma looked at him and asked, "Who put you in it?" The disciple stopped, shocked, and realized, "It was me. I put myself here." And at that moment, he was freed. You're an amateur because you decided to be an amateur. You're stuck in mediocrity because you accepted being in it. Becoming a professional is an internal decision. It's a mental click. Nobody can give you a professional certificate. You self-certify the moment you decide your mission is more important than your fear. When you make this transition, when you defeat resistance and sit down to work with humility and consistency, something magical happens. We enter the third part of the mystery, the higher realm. Just as there's a force that pushes you down, resistance, there are forces that pull you up, Pressfield says. Resistance works for the ego. Angels work for the self. The ego is the part of us concerned with survival, with appearance, with fear of death. The self is our deep essence, our true I, which is connected to the divine. When we act through the ego, we're alone. When we act through the self, we invoke powerful allies. The professional's code is the same as the warrior's or the monk's: service and absence of selfishness. When you work not to become famous, but to deliver your gift to the world, the universe noted this. It's like a magnet is switched on. Ideas begin to emerge. Coincidences happen. The right people appear. You begin operating on a different frequency. Press tells how when he lived in a trailer and was desperate, a friend named Paul Rink taught him an ancient prayer, the invocation to the Muses. From Homer, he started reciting this prayer every day before writing. It may seem like superstition, but it's not. It's mental technology to access the collective unconscious, or whatever you want to call that source of inspiration. The professional knows he doesn't create anything alone. He's just a channel. His job is to keep the channel clean so inspiration can pass through. In the next part, we'll discover how to keep that channel open and how to deal with the true nature of inspiration. Pressfield tells us how he learned to be a professional from a friend named Paul Rink. He spent 26 months pounding the keys of an old typewriter in a trailer until he finished his first novel. When he finally typed the word "end," he felt indescribable euphoria. He had defeated resistance. He ran to Paul's house and said, "I finished." Paul looked at him without great celebration and said, "Great, start another one today." That book was never published. In fact, it ended up in the trash. But Pressfield didn't write for the market. He wrote to become who he was. He learned that success isn't in publication but in the daily battle won. The professional knows victory is internal. But what happens when we commit in this way? Ancient traditions said we invoke the Muses. In Greek mythology, the Muses were daughters of Zeus, power, and Mnemosyne, memory. They were the sources of all inspiration. The Greeks believed no man could create anything of value alone. He needed to make space for something greater to pass through him. Plato in Phaedrus makes a crucial distinction. There's technical art, made only by human effort and intelligence, and there's inspired art, fruit of the Muses' madness. The purely technical work can be perfect, but it's cold. It doesn't change anyone's life. Inspired work has soul. It eclipses technical perfection because it carries a divine spark. It's a difference between Salieri, who composed with effort, and Mozart, who seemed merely to transcribe what he heard from heaven. The poet William Blake had a mysterious phrase: "Eternity is in love with the productions of time." This means there are timeless dimensions, planes of ideas and beauty that desire to enter our world. But they need a vehicle. They need a human being willing to do the heavy work, to sculpt the stone, to write the words, to build the bridge. When you become that disciplined professional, eternity uses you to manifest. That's why humility is the mark of the true creator. Pianist Nelson Freire, when receiving thunderous applause, used to leave the stage quickly. He said he didn't want to receive credit that wasn't his but belonged to the music. He saw himself only as a clean channel. If the channel is dirty with ego, vanity, and desire for fame, the music doesn't pass through. Pressfield adopts the ritual of reciting Homer's invocation to the Muses, the same one that opens the Odyssey. Homer doesn't ask for success or wealth. He asks for memory. He says, "O Muse, tell me the story of the man of many ways. Don't let me forget the song." The Odyssey isn't just an adventure story. It's the map of the human soul fighting monsters to return home to its essence. Homer also warns about Ulysses' companions, who, through foolishness, ate the sun god's cattle and were destroyed. This is a metaphor for profanation. When we use our sacred talent only to feed our ego or our greed, we're eating the sun's cattle. We're profaning the gift. The result is the destruction of our creative capacity. The professional serves the work, he doesn't serve himself through it. There's magic in beginning, Goethe said. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. The simple act of breaking inertia sends a signal to the universe. When you commit, the membrane between the physical and spiritual ruptures. Pressfield reports something curious. After hours of writing, he goes for a walk to empty his mind. And it's exactly at this moment, when he's not trying, that voices appear. Ideas emerge. Text corrections come to mind. Solutions to complex problems appear ready. Who's whispering this? Are they intelligent beings? Is it the subconscious? The name doesn't matter. The fact is, when you do your part, the other side does its part. The Kabbalists say that above each blade of grass there's an angel shouting, grow, grow. Pressfield believes that above the human race there's a super angel shouting, evolve, evolve, evolve. When we align with this evolutionary force, we stop being isolated beings fighting for survival and become agents of creation. Pressfield also talks about the importance of keeping your most sacred dreams secret. He had literal dreams during sleep that showed him he was capable. In one, it was an experienced sergeant named Largo, the only one capable of unsticking a ship. In another, he transformed into an eagle and realized the air was solid enough to sustain him. These dreams are messages from the self, from our wise part. If you go around telling these dreams to everyone, you dissipate the energy. It's an intimacy between you and your muse. Use that energy to work, not to chat. Illness is often a cry from the soul. Pressfield cites the work of a psychotherapist who treated terminal patients. When asked about their unrealized dreams, many decided, on the verge of death, to drop everything and do what they always wanted. Curiously, in many cases, the illness regressed. The body was taking revenge on the unlived life. When the person aligned the compass, vitality returned. Don't wait for a terminal diagnosis to take your dreams seriously. In the next and final part, we'll understand the difference between ego and self and how to close the cycle of creation. To deeply understand the battle against resistance, we need to use Carl Jung's psychology. Jung divided the psyche into two centers, the ego and the self. The ego is our small self, the part of us that deals with survival in the material world. The ego believes death is real. It believes time is scarce. It believes we're all separate and need to compete. The ego's predominant impulse is fear. The self is our greatest self, our soul. The self knows death is an illusion, just a passage. It knows time is relative and that, in essence, we are all one. The self's impulse is creation, love, and evolution. Resistance is, fundamentally, the ego trying to prevent the birth of the self. The ego hates the creator, the innovator, and the prophet because they threaten the stability of survival. This explains why we're so afraid. And the greatest fear of all isn't fear of failure. Failure is familiar. We already know how to deal with it. The real terror is fear of success. We're terrified of becoming who we really are. We fear accessing our real power because it would expel us from the tribe. It would isolate us in our uniqueness. The ego prefers the security of mediocrity to the risk of greatness. This brings us to a fundamental choice of orientation. Do you live by hierarchy or by territory? In the animal world, and in many human social structures, we live in hierarchy. The chicken knows who it can peck and who will peck it. At school, in the office, in Hollywood, everyone looks outward. Who's better than me? Who's worse? Where do I fit? Whoever lives by hierarchy works to be applauded by others. He doesn't consult his own soul, he consults the market. He doesn't say what he came to say. He says what others want to hear. This is the death of art. This is profanation. The professional, the true artist, operates by territory. Territory is your place of power. It can be your office, your studio, your gym, or your yoga mat. The coyote marks his territory and within it, he's king. Territory has a magical rule. It returns exactly what you deposit in it. If you deposit effort, sweat, and love, the territory returns energy and sanity to you. Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he felt depressed or confused, didn't call friends for validation. He went to the gym. The gym was his territory. Even if he were the last person on earth, he'd continue working out. Stevie Wonder, if alone in the universe, would continue playing piano. The professional works for love of territory, not for applause from the hierarchy. Ask yourself, if nobody were watching, if you were never going to be famous, would you still do what you do? If the answer is yes, you've found your territory. Finally, we arrive at the supreme teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, in the middle of the battlefield. The god Krishna tells the warrior Arjuna, "You have a right to your work, but never to the fruits of work." This is the key to freedom. The amateur is addicted to fruits, to money, fame, likes, praise. If the fruit doesn't come, he stops. The professional focuses only on action. The work itself is a reward. The satisfaction of knowing you fulfilled your duty, that you clocked in with your soul, is the only payment that matters. This makes you invincible, because success can't go to your head and failure can't destroy you. Both are external. Your honor is internal, Krishna instructs. Do the work as an offering to me. If inspiration comes from the divine, if talent was a loan from God, nothing is fairer than returning the result to him. The professional works as one who prays. He sculpts the chalice with his sweat so the divine can fill it with the wine of inspiration. Stephen Pressfield closes with a warning that serves us all. If you were born with a gift, with an idea, with a cure, or with a song, and you refuse to deliver it out of fear of resistance, you're not only harming yourself, you're harming your children, you're harming me, you're harming the entire planet. You're depriving humanity of your unique contribution. We came here with a single purpose, to push the human race 1 millimeter forward on its long journey back home. Don't die with your music inside you. Face the fear. Sit in the chair. Do the plan. Work. War is daily, but victory is eternal.